Today, I'm driving to the southeast corner of New York's High Peaks mountain range with my friend Ryan Arnold. Ryan and I have been working together in ministry for almost 10 years, and I know he is a very talented musician. But more than music, Ryan loves leading people in worshiping God. Today, on the frozen Chapel Pond, I want to talk to Ryan about what it means to truly worship God. Ryan, I think maybe in our Christian culture, we've kind of messed up the word worship. We've made it so that it is like synonymous with music, but I think it's more than that, right? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, sure. So why is that? I think because the music time that you have during a church service or camp or something like that, the intentionality is that it would be worship, which is us giving our attention to God and praising Him and thanking Him and surrendering to Him. Like, that's our worship through music. But it's not meant to be only there. And I think that's where we've really done the disservice, is that it's exclusively during that time, but when we're done singing, we stop thinking about worship. So I kind of did a study through Scripture, and I've been looking through every passage that I can find that has anything to do with worship. And majority of them have nothing to do with music, actually. A lot of them are obedience, where God has given a command and somebody says, in my worship to you, I'm going to do what you've asked me to do. And to be honest, it's a lot easier for you and I to sing a song than it is for us to say, God, I'm going to obey you. But that's our best form of worship to Him, is, God, I trust you, so I'm going to do what you've asked me to do. So one of the things that I've drawn from this is that all of us are always worshiping, but we're not always worshiping God. And so it's important for us to identify, what else am I inclined to worship? And most of the time it's going to be ourselves, that everything that I'm focused on today is what I want to do, what's going to make me feel good, what am I going to enjoy? And that's what I might give my day to. That's what I might choose to obey, for lack of a better word. And that's where we're giving our worship to something other than God. And so we have to identify those things. What are we worshiping instead of God?
It's interesting, even just as you're saying that, I'm realizing, I think that's why when we're out in a place like this, I find it easier for my heart to be moved to worship God, because I realize how big God is, and I feel very small, kind of standing around these humongous cliffs behind us. I feel small, and I'm reminded of how big God is, and I think that is something that sometimes we get mixed up. Like, we make ourselves bigger than we should be, and we make God smaller than He should be inside our minds, and then we're not going to worship God if He's just a few steps above us.
Right.
That's when our attention comes back on ourselves. So that's very very interesting to hear you describe it that way.
Absolutely. When we live in a world that is so much like, you can be whatever you want to be, like, set your heart to it and you can accomplish that. I'm not trying to discourage anybody, but we can't do that. But who can? God. And so I'd rather worship that. I'd rather worship Him in that, And so one of my examples for this is like a painting. If you saw this just, masterpiece that somebody had made, it'd be really silly for me to go to that and say, painting, you did such a great job. We acknowledge that it didn't do anything to make itself. The credit, the praise, or the worship would go to the artist, right? And similarly in life, when you look at something like this is awesome, but it leads me to worship the creator of that. And so God made all of this, and God made you and I, and so He's the one that deserves that worship. And it makes me think of Romans chapter 1, where Paul talks about people who exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images that represented people or animals, even like a lizard. People were worshiping this statue of a lizard. And it's like, lizards are cool, but they don't deserve our worship. And so, like you said, I think it's just when we elevate ourselves, like, here's how great I am, and we make God so small, that's when we get really confused about Him deserving our worship, and we section Him out to those moments in church, when really God is calling us to a lifestyle of worship, that every breath that He's so lovingly giving us, we're giving back to Him, saying, I trust you, I'm going to obey you. And that's a life of worship. And so I pray that we would never choose to exchange the glory of the immortal God to worship something so small as ourselves.
As you think back on this conversation, consider asking yourself these questions. Do I have an accurate view of who God is and who I am? Do I worship God in every area of my life? If I'm not worshiping God, who am I worshiping and why?